Hello and welcome back to the channel. In a previous video, I highlighted 5 reasons why Dubai could be a great place to start a business. If you missed it, there's a link to that video in the description box. Check it out if you'd like to know what those points were. I'd recommend watching that one first if you haven't already. In this video, I'm going to flip it around a little bit to balance out the conversation and talk about some of the very real challenges one might face when looking to set up and start a business in Dubai. And I'm going to highlight 5 of those challenges for you. Naturally, it's important to have a balanced view and understand both sides, pros and cons. And so by the end of this video, assuming you've watched the last one too, you'll be able to take an informed view on the question, is Dubai a good place to start a business? All right, so let's get into it. If you're new to this channel, let me give you a quick introduction. I'm Yusuf Ahmed and I'm an international lawyer with a boutique practice in commercial law. I split my time between Dubai and the UK, working with clients from all over the world. On this channel, I try to share content that ties in with my professional interests in law, business and sport. Okay, so top of my list as the first potential challenge is the business setup costs. Setting up a business in Dubai can be expensive. This is mainly due to a variety of mandatory costs and fees which need to be paid and settled right at the outset. The costs of licensing fees, registration charges, business documents, visa costs, government fees, office space, etc. These things all come at a cost and can add up quite significantly. Even if you were to go with a very basic or lean business setup in Dubai, let's say without the need of costly office space and essentially operating, again, let's say as a one-person operation to begin with, even then the costs are still relatively high just to get the initial business setup formalities completed. I would say you need to have a minimum budget of at least 12 to 15,000 dirhams, which is roughly about $3,500 to $4,000 or about £2,500 to £3,000 sterling. And those rates are, of course, at the time of this video. And that's quite a lot for one person to pay before they've even started doing anything. And that's just as a minimum budget. The costs can often be higher than that. Compare that to, for example, the UK, where it can pretty much cost next to nothing to complete the formalities in setting up a business. And both in theory and practice, many businesses in the UK can get set up and start trading right away with little to no mandatory outlay. But this is where I can highlight a key difference in approach when it comes to setting up a business in Dubai or across the wider UAE. You see, in Dubai and the UAE, the view was always that while there are relatively high costs involved to set up a business, the revenue that the business generates and receives, that is to be kept entirely by the business to distribute however it wants between its employees and shareholders. In other words, the business can keep all its revenue in full and use it all however it wants to. That was the traditional view and approach to it. Compare that to, for example, the UK, Europe, the US, etc., where the approach is that it can cost almost next to nothing to set up and start a business, but the government will be due a cut from its revenues by way of taxes, which are applied on both the business and its employees and shareholders. Now, that's a big difference in approach if you think about it. One is where you have high setup costs, but with a general expectation to keep and use all the revenue as you see fit. And the other is where you have next to no setup costs, but you will have to pay the government a cut of the revenue through the application of tax, which is applied on the profits of the business and also taken from its employees and shareholders. Of course, the traditional approach and concept has changed a bit recently in Dubai and the UAE, whereby corporation tax does now exist. But as I've mentioned in the previous video, a lot of SMEs in Dubai are not affected by it and usually have next to no liability on corporation tax. The bigger companies who are likely to have to pay the small rate of corporation tax as it applies in the UAE, they will probably have had no difficulties with the business setup cost to begin with anyway, as they'll probably have had the capital available for it. I often have to advise clients from Western countries on the significant difference in business setup costs because they're just not aware that it can cost so much when the equivalent in their home countries cost so little. And then I usually have to go over and explain how it's a different approach that's taken to it in Dubai and across the UAE, and also across the Middle East in general. And once they become aware of this reality, they tend to understand why it is like that. So just to conclude on this point, the costs involved in setting up a business in Dubai can be a significant challenge for budding entrepreneurs who don't have the initial capital required. Beyond the initial setup costs, you also need to think about the ongoing expenses for things like equipment, inventory, and office furnishings if the business is going to have an office, and anything else that the business might need to get started and then run and operate effectively going forward. All these elements taken together point to a substantial upfront investment being needed to properly set up and start a business in Dubai. And so there's a financial hurdle there that could be a very real barrier for small businesses and entrepreneurs looking to start a business in Dubai. Next up is the complex regulatory environment. While Dubai has made significant strides in simplifying business regulations, navigating the local legal and regulatory landscape can be challenging. Businesses need to comply with various laws and regulations, which can be complex and time-consuming to understand and get to grips with. There are multiple layers of regulations that a business needs to be aware of, from the local framework that applies in Dubai to the federal level framework that applies right across the UAE as a whole. So, for example, the tax regulations, they apply at a federal level, and all businesses will need to have an understanding of these regulations and how it impacts on their business. And then Dubai has its own regulatory framework that businesses need to be mindful of too. For example, businesses that are set up through the Dubai Department of Economic Development, often referred to as the Dubai DED, will need to understand how the Dubai DED's regulations affect their operations along with the local laws of the Emirate of Dubai. And similarly, businesses that are set up in one of Dubai's numerous free zones will need to be able to navigate the free zones regulations, Dubai's local regulations, and the overarching federal regulations. These examples highlight the layered regulatory environment that businesses in Dubai need to navigate and understand, from local regulations specific to the Emirate to federal laws that apply right across the UAE. This complexity requires a thorough understanding of the regulatory environment to ensure compliance and smooth business operations. And navigating such a complex regulatory environment is something that can be particularly daunting and challenging for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And they'll often need to get expert advisors on board to help guide them and keep them right. Okay, the next point is about understanding and adapting to the local culture, which I would say is crucial for success in Dubai. The business etiquette can be different to what you might be used to. Building personal relationships and trust is often more important than jumping straight into business. For example, at business meetings, it's not uncommon to start with a lot of personal conversation before any business matters are discussed, and people it can take quite a bit of time to get to know one another before getting down to business. And that old saying of people buy from people, that can be a prominent feature when it comes to doing business in Dubai and getting deals done. In addition, sometimes there's also certain cultural ways in which business is conducted. For example, if you were looking to do business with someone from the local indigenous population, then you can often expect to attend a majlis, which is a kind of social gathering with decision makers and their advisors, and where you can expect to sip on some traditional tea, have some refreshments, and there can very much be a strong social aspect involved in business. And how that social interaction goes can often be a deciding factor on whether a deal is to be done or not. So anyway, it's just something to be aware of, that business dealings can be a lot different to what one might be used to. And the Dubai market is highly diverse, so gaining and understanding how to cater to locals and also expats and tourists from all over the world is going to be essential to succeed in business. And thought will need to go into taking the high level of diversity within the local market into account and devising workable marketing strategies to effectively reach whatever the target demographic is for the business. And that's something that, again, can be challenging for entrepreneurs and small businesses who aren't used to or familiar with the local market. Next worth mentioning is navigating the visa and immigration rules and policies. This can be another real challenge when starting a business in Dubai. The majority of the local population is made up of foreigners, so there is naturally going to be a need to consider the immigration and visa side of things when it comes to staff and hiring employees. Obtaining the relevant visas for employees can sometimes be a complicated process, just depending on individual cases and circumstances, but invariably it can be costly. And when hiring employees who are expats, a business will typically be responsible for procuring their visas and picking up all costs involved in that. The visa and immigration costs, health insurance, and other related expenses. That can add up to a significant administrative and financial burden, especially for small businesses and startups. There are also specific quotas and requirements for different types of businesses, and applying for the necessary visas can be time consuming as well, with a lot of running around at times to complete the various formalities involved. It can be a challenge getting through all of that, but in practice, at least on the logistics side of things, a business would normally just arrange assistance with getting all of that sorted. But there is going to be an administrative and financial burden involved when it comes to the visa and immigration side of things. And that, I think, is worth mentioning as a potential challenge for a new business. Having things in place and ensuring there's a budget to manage all of that. Right, so the last thing I want to highlight is the intense business competition that exists in Dubai. It can be a very competitive market with so many established businesses and international brands operating within the local market. Some argue that it's oversaturated just because there are so many businesses operating in every sector. So the competition can certainly be fierce. A business entering the Dubai market, it needs to be able to stand out in such a crowded marketplace, and that in turn could mean that substantial investment in marketing and innovation will be required. Again, it kind of comes back to the earlier point of arguably needing a good level of capital at the outset to get a business up and running and off to a good start. I think to enter the Dubai market successfully, you generally need to be able to offer something different, something unique even to what is already available, something that can stand out and that's going to pique people's interest. Whether it's some kind of special product or service that's different in some way, or something that's maybe of a higher quality, or that can be offered at a much more competitive price. Just something that stands out and is different. That sort of thing may well be arguably a necessary prerequisite to enter the Dubai market successfully and attract a good level of business going forward. And that means being both prepared and able to invest in building the brand value of a business and developing a customer base. And again, this is something that can be a real challenge in a busy and crowded market. So these are 5 reasons why Dubai can be a challenging place to start a business. And I think it's useful to be aware of some of these points. As I've said before, if Dubai interests you as a place to start or expand a business, then it's certainly worth exploring, and there can be many compelling reasons in favour of the idea, which I've highlighted in previous videos, but equally, it's important to be aware of potential downsides too, and take a balanced approach as you weigh it up for yourself if it is something that you're thinking about or exploring. I hope this video has provided you with some useful insights, and taken together with the previous video, it has offered a balanced perspective. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Dubai as a place to start a business? Do the challenges I highlighted deter you, or do you think the potential benefits outweigh the downsides? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing to help me grow this channel. And if you found the video useful, you might also like to check out this other video over here. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you again soon.